Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back into a world of stiff collars, flickering gaslight, and the most magnificent, gravity-defying facial hair the world has ever seen. You probably believe this era was just about dusty books and tea parties, but the reality is that the Victorian face was a masterpiece of engineering, a landscape of sculpted bristles that required more maintenance than a high-end sports car does today. Before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through, tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing before a heavy, mahogany-framed mirror in a room that smells faintly of sandalwood, lavender, and the sharp, metallic tang of a coal fire burning downstairs. The year is 1885, and the morning light is a pale, milky gray, filtering through heavy velvet curtains that dampen the sounds of the horses and carriages passing on the cobblestones outside. Your first task of the day has nothing to do with checking your emails or scrolling through a newsfeed. Instead, you must attend to the massive, elaborate structure of hair currently occupying the lower half of your face. In this era, a man is often judged by the architectural integrity of his mustache. It is not merely hair, it is a symbol of virility, social standing, and disciplined character. You reach for a small, ornate jar of Hungarian pomade, a thick, sticky wax designed to defy the very laws of gravity. The Victorian obsession with facial hair was not an accidental trend, but a deeply rooted cultural mandate. You carefully unscrew the lid of the jar, feeling the cool ceramic against your palm. Inside lies the secret to your public dignity, a blend of beeswax, resins, and sometimes even lard or bear grease, scented with essential oils to mask the less pleasant aromas of city life. You take a small amount between your thumb and forefinger, warming it until it becomes pliable. As you begin to work the wax into the long, sweeping ends of your mustache, you realize that your morning routine is a slow, meditative process. There is no rushing here. To rush is to risk a lopsided curl, and a lopsided curl is a social catastrophe that could lead to whispered jokes at the gentleman's club later that evening. You might say that a Victorian man's morning routine took considerably longer than a modern teenager spends choosing the perfect filter for a photo, and the stakes were arguably much higher. As you twist the ends of your mustache into tight, sharp points, you think about the sheer variety of styles surrounding you in this society. There is the imperial, a haughty look where the hair grows from the cheeks, as well as the lip, pointing toward the heavens like two furry daggers. Then there is the handlebar, so named because it resembles the steering mechanism of those new, fangled bicycles people are starting to ride in the park. You carefully comb through the strands with a tiny silver-backed brush, ensuring every hair is aligned. Historians still argue whether the extreme mustachy styles of the mid to late 19th century were a subconscious reaction to the rise of industrialization, a way for men to reclaim a sense of rugged, natural identity in an increasingly mechanical world. Regardless of the reason, the result is the same. You are currently wearing a structural marvel on your face that requires constant vigilance. One mainstream historical fact that often surprises people is that the British Army actually mandated the wearing of mustaches for several decades. From 1860 until 1916, Command Order No. 1647 strictly forbade soldiers from shaving their upper lips. A clean, shaven soldier was a soldier in breach of regulations, potentially facing disciplinary action for having a naked face. This military influence trickled down into civilian life, making the mustache a badge of authority and masculine strength. You feel the weight of this tradition as you apply a final layer of wax. It feels heavy, a constant presence under your nose, reminding you of your place in the world. However, this commitment to fashion comes with a hidden cost that you are about to encounter at the breakfast table. The wax is strong, but it is also vulnerable to the one thing every Victorian gentleman loves: a hot, steaming bowl of soup or a piping hot cup of tea. A quirky, fringe tidbit from this era involves the use of mustache trainers. While you are sleeping, you might wear a specialized leather strap that buckles behind your head, holding your mustache in a specific shape through the night, so that it doesn't get crushed against the pillow. It is essentially a brassiere for the face, a thought that brings a small, sleepy smile to your lips as you finish your grooming. You imagine yourself sleeping in such a contraption, the leather pressing against your cheeks, dreaming of silver spoons and velvet waistcoats. The dedication to the craft of the mustache is truly boundless. You could call it a hobby, but for you, it is a way of life. You turn away from the mirror and prepare to head downstairs. The house is quiet, the air thick with the scent of old wood and floor wax. Your boots make a dull thud on the thick, patterned carpet of the hallway. Each step feels deliberate. You are a man of the Victorian age, and your face is ready to meet the public. But as you descend the stairs, you feel a slight tension. The wax is stiffening in the cool morning air, making your upper lip feel immobile. It is a strange sensation, like having two small, wooden twigs glued to your face. You wonder if the effort is truly worth it. But then you remember the look of respect in the eyes of the baker, or the lift of a hat from a fellow gentleman in the street. In this world, appearance is the currency of trust. As you enter the dining room, the sun is beginning to burn through the fog, casting long, golden rectangles across the white lace tablecloth. The silver service is laid out, gleaming with a soft, polished light. There are forks for fish, forks for salad, and spoons of every imaginable size. But today, your eyes are fixed on the steaming tureen of soup, sitting in the center of the table. This is the moment of truth. You know that as soon as the steam hits your face, the meticulously applied wax will begin to soften. The resins will lose their grip, and the beeswax will start to turn back into a liquid state. Your majestic handlebar, the pride of your morning, is at risk of drooping into your broth like a pair of sad, wet noodles. It is a design flaw in the Victorian male's aesthetic, a recurring nightmare of the lunch hour. You sit down, the chair creaking softly under your weight. You pick up a standard soup spoon, its bowl wide and deep. You hesitate. You have seen this happen before. A gentleman leans in for a sip, The heat rises, and suddenly, his mustache is no longer a symbol of power but a saturated sponge, dripping beef bouillon down his chin. It is undignified. It is messy. It is the great hidden struggle of your generation. You might think that, with all the bridges they built and the empires they managed, the Victorians would have figured out a way to eat soup without ruining their facial hair. And yet, here you are, staring at a bowl of carrot and coriander soup as if it were a dangerous adversary. The problem is not just the melting wax, it is the sheer length of the hair. A proper mustache in 1885 often extends well past the corners of the mouth. Without some form of protection, every spoonful of liquid must pass through a forest of hair before it reaches your lips. It is like trying to pour tea through a very expensive, very hairy strainer. You've heard stories of men who had to use their fingers to hold their mustaches back while they ate, but that is hardly appropriate for a man of your standing. Such a display would be seen as uncouth, a breach of the very etiquette that the mustache is supposed to represent. You are caught in a paradox of style versus function, a struggle that defines the domestic life of the era. You consider the social pressure of the dinner table. In the Victorian parlor, every movement is choreographed. The way you hold your glass, the way you use your napkin, and the way you manage your facial hair are all under scrutiny. If you fail to keep your mustache clean, you are seen as someone who lacks self-control. There is a joke among the local wits that a man with a messy mustache is a man with a messy mind, and you certainly don't want to be the subject of such gossip. You take a deep breath, the scent of the soup filling your senses. It smells wonderful, savory and warm, but it also represents a threat to your carefully curated persona. You find yourself wishing for a solution, some kind of tool or invention that could bridge the gap between your hunger and your vanity. The light in the room shifts as a cloud passes over the sun, turning the silver on the table into a dull, leaden gray. You feel a sense of calm despite the soup dilemma. The house is so peaceful, the only sound being the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Each tick is a reminder of the slow pace of life in this world. There is no need to rush your meal. You can sit here and contemplate the silver, the lace, and the hair on your face for as long as you like. You realize that the Victorian era is full of these small, quiet contradictions. It is a time of grand ambitions and tiny, intricate problems. It is a time of steam engines and mustache wax. You look closely at the spoon in your hand. It is beautiful, with delicate engravings of ivy leaves along the handle. It is a heavy piece of silver, cold to the touch. But as a tool for a mustachioed man, it is fundamentally flawed. It offers no protection, no barrier. It is simply a vessel for liquid, indifferent to the plight of the gentleman using it. You begin to imagine a different kind of spoon, one with a guard or a shield. You aren't the only one thinking this, of course. Across the country, in small workshops and grand patent offices, people are tinkering with designs. They are trying to solve the soup problem once and for all. It is a golden age of invention, where no problem is too small to be addressed by a clever piece of metalwork. The great wax melt is not just a personal inconvenience. It's a shared cultural experience for men of a certain class. You remember a dinner party last week where a prominent colonel had a complete mustache collapse halfway through the second course. One side of his facial hair simply gave up, drooping down, while the other side remained defiantly pointed toward his ear. The poor man spent the rest of the evening trying to surreptitiously reshape it with his napkin, looking more like he was trying to put out a small fire on his face than enjoy a conversation about the railway. It is these moments of vulnerability that humanize the stern faces you see in old, sepia-toned photographs. Behind every stiff expression was a man terrified of a stray drop of gravy. As you sit in your quiet dining room, you feel a wave of sleepiness wash over you. The warmth of the room, the soft light, and the steady ticking of the clock are all working together to lull you into a state of relaxation. You think about the thousands of men across the city, all performing this same ritual, all facing the same soup-based anxiety. It is a strange, comforting thought. You are part of a brotherhood of the bristle, a community of individuals dedicated to a very specific, very hairy form of art. You realize that while the mustache may be a burden, it is also a connection to the world around you. You decide to take a risk and take a small sip of the soup. You lean forward cautiously, keeping your head at a precise angle to minimize the steam's impact. As the spoon nears your lips, you feel the warmth radiating upward. You can almost hear the wax protesting, the molecules beginning to slide past one another. You take the sip, and for a moment, all is well. But then, as you pull the spoon away, you feel it, a heavy, damp sensation on the left side of your lip. You reach up with your finger and confirm your fears. A single, stubborn drop of soup has hitched a ride on your mustache. It is a small defeat, but in the world of Victorian etiquette, there are no small defeats. This constant battle between fashion and food is what led to the birth of the mustache spoon, a device so specialized and so specific to its time that it eventually became a relic of a bygone era. But here, in 1885, it is a dream of the future, a hope for a more dignified dining experience. You imagine a spoon with a tiny silver bridge, a little roof for your lip that would allow the soup to pass underneath, while keeping your hair dry and waxed. It sounds like a luxury, but to you, it feels like a necessity. You lean back in your chair, letting the soup cool for a moment. There is no hurry. The fog is still clinging to the window panes, and the fire is still crackling softly in the hearth. You find yourself thinking about the history of the mustache itself. It has gone in and out of style for centuries, but never before has it been so heavily regulated by the rules of grooming products. In the Middle Ages, a mustache was just hair. In the Victorian age, it is a project. You wonder if future generations will look back at your face and laugh at the effort you put into it. Historians still argue whether the decline of the mustache in the early 20th century was due to the invention of the safety razor or the grim realities of chemical warfare in the trenches, where a thick mustache prevented a gas mask from sealing properly. But that is a long way off. For now, you are safe in your dining room, surrounded by the comforts of the 19th century. The heaviness of your eyelids is becoming harder to ignore. The repetitive nature of your thoughts, the wax, the spoon, the steam, the clock, is like a gentle lullaby. You imagine the silver spoon in your hand growing larger and softer, turning into a shimmering, metallic cloud. The room begins to blur at the edges, the mahogany furniture fading into a soft, dark shadow. You are no longer worried about the soup. You are no longer worried about the wax. You are simply a passenger in this quiet, historical moment, drifting on a sea of lavender, scented air. You think about the Mustache Protection League. Again, that fictional group of men you joked about earlier. You imagine them all sitting in a large, silent hall, their mustaches perfectly waxed and gleaming under crystal chandeliers. They are all holding their spoons with practiced grace, their faces frozen in expressions of permanent, hairy dignity. It is a peaceful image, a monument to a time when a man's biggest problem was a bowl of hot liquid. You feel a sense of kinship with them, a shared understanding of the delicate balance required to navigate a world of high fashion and hot food. As you drift closer to sleep, the sensory details of the room become more vivid yet more distant. You can feel the texture of the linen napkin on your lap, the slight roughness of the lace. You can hear the distant cry of a street vendor, a lonely sound that emphasizes the silence of your home. The world is vast and complicated, but here in this chair, it is small and manageable. Your mustache feels lighter now, as if the wax has finally set into a permanent, unbreakable bond. You are ready to rest. You are ready to let the history of the mustache spoon unfold in your dreams. A silver, plated story of ingenuity and vanity. The journey has only just begun, but the path is soft and lined with velvet. You close your eyes, the image of a perfectly curled handlebar mustache being the last thing you see before the darkness takes over, warm and welcoming like a heavy Victorian blanket. The steam from your bowl of mulligatawny soup rises in a lazy, translucent spiral, twisting through the air like a ghost in the morning light. You watch it drift upward, realizing that this beautiful, fragrant vapor is actually a silent predator, an invisible force designed to dismantle the structural integrity of your face. It is a slow, quiet realization. You are sitting in your dining chair, the velvet upholstery pressing softly against your back, and you are staring at a liquid that has the power to turn you from a pillar of the community into a damp, disheveled mess. The warmth of the soup is inviting, a savory promise of comfort. But to a man with a waxed mustache, it is also a thermal threat. You think about the physics of the situation. Your mustache is currently held in place by a mixture of beeswax and resins that have a very specific melting point. As the temperature of the air around your mouth rises, those molecules begin to vibrate, losing their grip on one another. The stiff, proud curls that took you 20 minutes to perfect are beginning to feel the heat. It is a subtle sensation at first, a slight loosening of the tension near your lip, as if the hair is finally deciding to relax after a long, stressful morning. You pick up your silver spoon, the weight of it familiar and solid in your hand. The handle is cool, a sharp contrast to the heat radiating from the bowl. As you lower the spoon into the soup, you can see your reflection in the polished silver of the tureen. You look distinguished, yes, but you also look like a man who is about to walk a very thin tightrope. You remember that crocodile, dung sunscreen we talked about in a different life, and you realize that humans have always gone to extreme lengths for the sake of their appearance. Here, in the late 19th century, the struggle is just as real, even if it is more refined. You lean forward slightly, and the first wave of heat hits your face. It feels like a gentle, warm towel, but you know better. You can feel the wax starting to give way. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual softening, a slow migration of the stiffening agent from the hair to your skin. You might say your mustache is undergoing a mid-life crisis right there on your face, deciding it no longer wants to be a handlebar and would much rather be a weeping willow. The social horror of the mustache melt is a very real phenomenon in your world. Imagine you are at a high society dinner, perhaps seated next to a duchess or a prominent industrialist. You are mid-sentence, discussing the merits of the new telegraph lines, when a drop of condensation forms on the tip of your mustache. It hangs there, shimmering in the candlelight, a tiny, watery traitor. You can't wipe it away without smearing the wax, and you can't leave it there without looking like you've just come in from a rainstorm. And then, the ultimate catastrophe, one side of your mustache simply collapses. It sags into your soup, absorbing the broth like a sponge. Historians still argue whether the extreme focus on grooming in this era was a way to distinguish class or a genuine obsession with the aesthetics of the male form. But in this moment, it feels like a personal battle between you and your lunch. You are not just eating, you are defending your dignity against a bowl of vegetables. You take a small, cautious sip, and the liquid is delicious. But as you pull the spoon away, you realize that your mustache has acted as a natural filter. It has captured several small herbs and a significant amount of the cream base. You feel the weight of the soup clinging to the hairs, pulling them down. It is a heavy, sticky sensation. You could call it a flavor saver if you were feeling particularly humorous, but there is nothing funny about having to discreetly clean pieces of parsley out of your facial hair with a silk handkerchief. You imagine the microscopic world of your mustache, a forest of protein strands currently being flooded by a tidal wave of hot bouillon. It is a messy reality that contradicts the polished, orderly image the Victorian age tries so hard to project. You are a man of the modern world, a man of progress and industry, and yet you are being defeated by a spoon and some warm water. A quirky, fringe tidbit that you might find amusing is that some men actually resorted to wearing mustache nets during their meals. These were tiny, intricate structures made of silk or fine wire that clipped onto the nose or ears, physically holding the hair back and away from the mouth. It looked a bit like you were wearing a very small, very fancy fence on your face. While effective, it wasn't exactly the height of fashion, and most gentlemen preferred to risk the melt rather than look like they were wearing a hairnet for their lip. You choose to forego the net, relying instead on your steady hand and a quick prayer to the gods of grooming. You realize that your mustache is not just an accessory. It is a commitment. It requires constant maintenance, even in the middle of a meal. You find yourself missing the simplicity of a clean, shaven face, but only for a fleeting second. To be clean, shaven in 1885 is to be a boy among men, or so the fashion magazines tell you. One mainstream historical fact that adds weight to your struggle is that the Victorian era was obsessed with the idea of stiff upper lip mentality, both literally and figuratively. The mustache served as a physical manifestation of this stoicism. It masked the mouth, hiding any tremors of emotion or flickers of doubt. But when that mustache becomes saturated with soup, the mask slips. A wet, drooping mustache is the opposite of stoic. It is vulnerable and slightly ridiculous. You feel this vulnerability as you navigate the next spoonful. The air in the dining room is still, the only sound being the rhythmic ticking of the clock and the soft clink of your silver against the porcelain. You are acutely aware of your own breathing, the way the warm air from your nostrils further softens the wax. It is a delicate ecosystem you are managing, a balance of temperature, moisture, and gravity. You think about the different types of waxes available at the local apothecary. There are the cheap, paraffin-based ones that smell like old candles and melt at the slightest hint of a breeze. Then there are the premium beeswax and gum arabic blends, which promise a rock, solid hold, even in the tropics. You clearly didn't apply enough of the premium blend this morning. You can feel the ends of your mustache starting to tickle your lower lip, a sure sign that the curl is failing. It's like watching a slow-motion shipwreck. Only the ship is made of hair, and it's sinking into a sea of mulligatawny. You find yourself wondering if the ancient Romans had this problem. Probably not. They preferred the clean look of a marble statue. The Victorians, however, decided that more was more, and now you are paying the price in sticky residue. The soup problem extends beyond just the melting of wax. There is also the issue of hygiene. Historians still argue whether the decline of the mustache in the early 20th century was driven by the newly discovered germ theory of disease. Doctors began to warn that large, bushy mustaches were essentially bacteria traps, catching coughs, sneezes, and food particles, and holding them inches away from the wearer's airway. As you sit here, feeling the dampness of the soup in your hair, you can't help but agree. It doesn't feel very hygienic. It feels like you are carrying a small, damp pet around on your face. You make a mental note to give your mustache a thorough washing with carbolic soap later, just to be safe. But for now, you must finish your meal. You are a gentleman after all, and leaving a bowl of perfectly good soup unfinished would be a waste. You try a different technique. You widen your mouth as much as possible, attempting to create a clear path for the spoon that bypasses the hair entirely. It's an awkward movement, one that makes you feel a bit like a hungry fish, but it seems to be working. You manage to get a few clear sips down before the condensation from the steam settles on your upper lip again. The moisture acts as a lubricant, making the hair even more prone to sagging. You feel a sense of frustration, a quiet, polite Victorian frustration that involves a sharp exhale and a slightly more aggressive use of your napkin. You are a victim of your own vanity. You wanted the magnificent mustache, and now you have to live with the consequences. It's a bit like owning a very large, very beautiful house that has a roof that leaks every time it rains. As you sit there, the fire in the hearth crackles softly, throwing flickering orange light across the room. The warmth is pleasant on your legs, but it's not helping the situation on your face. You feel a strange sense of irony. Here you are, surrounded by the finest products of the Industrial Revolution. The silver, the fine china, the imported spices. And you are being stymied by something as simple as hair. You think about the inventors of the age, the men who designed steamships and suspension bridges. Surely one of them has noticed this problem. Surely someone has sat at a table, just like this one, and thought, there must be a better way to eat soup. You imagine a team of engineers in top hats, huddled over a blueprint of a spoon, debating the optimal curvature of a mustache guard. It sounds absurd, But in a world that invented a machine to peel grapes, it's entirely plausible. The sensory experience of the meal is beginning to change. The soup is cooling down, which is good for the wax, but less pleasant for the palate. The flavors are becoming more muted, the spices less vibrant. You realize that your mustache has also altered your sense of smell. The scent of the wax, a mix of pine and old honey, is competing with the aroma of the soup. It's a confusing olfactory landscape. You take a bite of bread, hoping to clear the palate, but even the bread is a challenge. The crust is hard and crumbly, and several crumbs immediately find a home in the thicket of your facial hair. You are becoming a walking pantry. If you were stranded on a deserted island, you could probably survive for a few days, just on the bits of food trapped in your mustache. It's a comforting, if slightly disgusting, thought. You find yourself drifting into a light daydream as the clock continues its steady pace. You imagine a world where the mustache is the most important thing a person can own. A world where there are mustache architects and mustache police. You see yourself walking down a street where everyone has a different, elaborate style. One man has a mustache shaped like a pair of wings. Another has one that curls around his ears like a pair of earmuffs. In this dream world, everyone has a special tool for eating, a shimmering silver device that protects their precious hair. It's a beautiful, peaceful vision. You feel your muscles relax as the daydream takes hold. The stress of the soup disaster begins to fade, replaced by a sense of calm acceptance. You are brought back to reality by the sound of a carriage passing outside, the horse's hooves making a rhythmic, muffled sound against the damp stones. You look down at your bowl. It is nearly empty. You have survived the soup, but at a cost. Your mustache is a shadow of its former self. One side is still holding on, a defiant little hook of hair, but the other side has given up completely, hanging straight down past the corner of your mouth. You look like a man who has been partially deflated. You reach for your napkin and gently pat your lip, trying to soak up the excess moisture without making things worse. It's a futile effort. The wax is gone, washed away by the steam and the broth. You will have to start the grooming process all over again before you leave the house. This experience is exactly why the mustache spoon was such a revolutionary idea. It wasn't just a gimmick. It was a solution to a daily struggle that affected millions of men. It was a way to reclaim one's dignity at the dinner table. You think about the first person who thought to solder a small strip of silver across the top of a spoon. They must have felt like a genius. They probably sat down to their next bowl of soup with a sense of triumph, knowing that their mustache was safe behind its little silver shield. You can almost feel the phantom weight of a mustache spoon in your hand, its cool metal protecting your lip from the heat. It's a comforting thought, a promise of a better, cleaner future. You lean back in your chair, letting out a long, slow breath. The room is quiet again, the only sound the soft hiss of the gaslight. You feel a deep sense of relaxation. The meal is over, and despite the disaster, you are still here, still comfortable, still safe in your Victorian home. You realize that these small struggles are what make history feel human. It's easy to look at old photos and see stiff, formal figures, but when you imagine them struggling with a bowl of soup, they become real. They become people just like you, trying to look their best while navigating the messy realities of life. You feel a sense of kinship with your ancestors, a shared understanding of the effort it takes to maintain an image. The light in the room is fading as the clouds thicken outside. The pale gray light is turning into a soft, charcoal shadow. You find yourself thinking about the nature of trends. Why did everyone decide that this specific look was the one to go for? Why did people subject themselves to the wax and the heat and the constant maintenance? You might call it a form of social camouflage, a way to fit in with the crowd while still expressing a bit of individuality. Or perhaps it was just a way to pass the time in a world without television or the internet. Grooming was a hobby, a craft, and a social ritual all rolled into one. You realize that your mustache is a piece of art that you carry with you everywhere you go. As the sleepiness continues to pull at you, your thoughts become more fragmented. You think about the smell of the soap you will use later. You think about the soft texture of your bed sheets. You think about the way the light catches the silver on the table. Everything feels interconnected, a web of sensory details that define your existence. You are no longer just a man with a messy mustache. You are a part of a larger story, a narrative of silver and silk and steam. The soup disaster was just a chapter in that story, a small moment of chaos in an otherwise orderly day. You find yourself smiling, a genuine, sleepy smile that makes the drooping side of your mustache twitch. You imagine the mustache spoon again. But this time it's not just a tool, it's a symbol of peace. You see a long table filled with men, all using their mustache spoons in perfect unison. There is no soup splashing, no wax melting, no social anxiety. There is only the quiet sound of eating and the glint of silver in the light. It's a peaceful, harmonious image that brings a sense of closure to your meal. You feel ready to move on, to leave the dining room and find a comfortable spot to rest. The world outside can wait. For now, there is only the warmth of the room and the soft, steady rhythm of your own heart. You stand up slowly, your boots making that familiar dull thud on the carpet. You take one last look at your reflection in the mirror. You look a bit disheveled, yes, but there is a certain charm to it. You look like a man who has lived through a struggle and come out the other side. You reach up and give the sagging side of your mustache a little tug, a playful gesture that acknowledges the absurdity of the situation. You are ready to face the rest of the day, or perhaps just the rest of the afternoon, with a renewed sense of calm. The great wax melt is over, and you have survived. As you walk toward the door, you think about how lucky you are to live in an age of such creativity. Tomorrow, you might go to the silversmith and ask about those new spoons you've heard about. You might even order one with your initials engraved on the guard. It would be a fine addition to your collection, a practical tool that also serves as a conversation piece. But that is a thought for tomorrow. Today, you are simply going to enjoy the feeling of being relaxed and full. You move into the hallway, the shadows deepening around you, and you feel the weight of the day lifting from your shoulders. The journey through the history of the mustache spoon is continuing, and you are drifting along with it, one quiet step at a time. The world of the Victorians is a world of layers. Layers of clothing, layers of social rules, and layers of wax on a mustache. Sometimes those layers peel back, revealing the messy, human core underneath. And that's okay. It's what makes the story interesting. You find yourself leaning against the doorframe for a moment, eyes half closed, listening to the silence of the house. It is a profound, heavy silence that seems to wrap around you like a cocoon. You are safe. You are warm. And your mustache, however saggy it may be, is a part of who you are in this moment. You are ready to let the next part of the story unfold, to see where the path leads next. You close your eyes, and for a second, you can almost taste the silver. The cool air of the hallway greets you as you step away from the dining room, leaving the remnants of your soup-based struggle behind. Your boots make a dull, rhythmic thud on the floorboards, a sound that seems to echo the steady beating of your heart. You are moving toward the front door, your hand reaching for your heavy wool coat. The fabric is thick and comforting, smelling faintly of the cedar chest where it spent the summer. As you wrap the coat around your shoulders, you feel a sense of purpose. You have decided that the great wax melt will be the last of its kind. You are going to visit the silversmith. The street outside is a tapestry of gray and gold, the fog beginning to lift as the afternoon sun makes a brave appearance. You walk down the cobblestone path, your eyes scanning the shop windows. Everything in this part of the city feels solid, permanent, and meticulously crafted. You pass a hatter, a glover, and a clockmaker, the rhythmic ticking of 100 gears spilling out onto the sidewalk like a metallic heartbeat. Finally, you reach a shop with a modest but elegant sign, fine silver and novelties. The bell above the door makes a soft, melodic chime as you enter, a sound that is quickly swallowed by the thick, hushed atmosphere of the shop. The air inside is heavy with the scent of silver polish, a sharp, chemical smell that somehow feels clean and sophisticated. You are surrounded by glass cases filled with objects that glitter with a soft, ethereal light. There are fish servers with handles shaped like dolphins, asparagus tongues that look like delicate silver claws, and tiny, ornate salt cellars that resemble miniature Roman ruins. One mainstream historical fact about this period is that the Victorian middle class was obsessed with specialized silverware. As the wealth of the Industrial Revolution spread, the dinner table became a complex battlefield of etiquette, with over 100 different types of spoons, forks, and knives designed for very specific tasks. If you used the wrong utensil for your oysters or your sardines, you might as well have been wearing a potato sack to the opera. You feel a sense of awe at the sheer variety of tools on display. It seems there is a silver solution for every possible problem a human could encounter at a table. You move toward a display case in the back of the shop, where the novelties are kept. This is where the true engineering happens. You see a grape shear, designed to snip a single fruit from the bunch without bruising its neighbors, and a marrow scoop for extracting the fatty treasures from the center of a bone. And then you see it. It is tucked away in a velvet-lined box, looking like a piece of high-tech machinery from a future century. It is the mustache spoon. You lean in closer, your breath fogging the glass for a moment. At first glance, it looks like a standard soup spoon, but across the top of the bowl, there is a delicate, semi-circular bridge of silver. It looks like a tiny, ornate balcony or perhaps a very small, metallic shield. This is the Mustache Guard, an invention that promised to change the lives of gentlemen everywhere. You could call it the Victorian version of a life hack. Though the phrase hasn't been invented yet, and would probably sound like some sort of violent agricultural accident to your ears. The shopkeeper, a quiet man with spectacles perched on the very tip of his nose, approaches you with a tray. He doesn't say a word, but he understands. He lifts the spoon from its velvet cradle and hands it to you. The silver is cold and surprisingly heavy. You run your thumb over the guard, feeling the smooth, polished surface. It is a marvel of design. The guard is slightly curved, positioned precisely where your upper lip would rest against the spoon. It features a small, elongated opening near the tip of the bowl, allowing the soup to flow through while keeping the hair of your mustache safely elevated above the danger zone. Historians still argue whether the mustache spoon was a genuine necessity born of practical struggle or a clever marketing ploy by silversmiths to sell even more unnecessary gadgets to a class of people with too much money and too much hair. As you hold it, however, it feels like a revelation. It feels like the answer to a prayer you didn't even know you were allowed to voice. You imagine using this spoon back in your dining room. You see yourself lifting a spoonful of hot, steaming broth. The steam rises, but instead of hitting your mustache and melting the wax, it hits the underside of the silver guard. The hair remains dry, cool, and perfectly styled. The soup flows effortlessly through the little window in the metal, reaching your mouth without ever touching a single follicle. It is a beautiful, clean, and dignified process. A quirky, fringe tidbit about these spoons is that they were often sold in travel kits. A gentleman who was particularly protective of his image would carry his own mustache spoon in a small, leather-bound case, ensuring that even when dining at a hotel or a friend's house, his facial hair would remain uncompromised. You imagine yourself at a grand banquet, reaching into your pocket and producing your personal silver shield. It would be a statement of supreme preparation, a sign that you are a man who has mastered the art of living. You decide that you must have it. You place the spoon back on the tray and nod to the shopkeeper. As he goes to prepare the package, you continue to browse the cases, your mind drifting through the history of this invention. The mustache spoon didn't appear out of thin air. It was the sibling of the more common Mustache cup, invented by a British potter named Harvey Adams in the 1860s. The Mustache cup featured a similar guard built into the rim of a tea or coffee cup. It was a massive success, sold by the thousands across Europe and America. But the spoon was a more refined evolution. While a cup only protected you from tea, the spoon protected you from the messy, unpredictable world of soups and stews. You realize that you are participating in a grand tradition of human ingenuity. We have built canals and railways, and now we have conquered the soup bowl. You feel a small, sleepy sense of pride. The Victorians were nothing if not thorough. The shopkeeper returns with a small box, wrapped in thick brown paper and tied with a neat, waxed string. You pay him and step back out into the street. The light is softer now, the gold of the afternoon turning into a gentle, honey-colored amber. You tuck the box under your arm, feeling the weight of the silver against your side. It is a comforting weight. You think about the mustache aerodynamics of the new tool. Will it change the way you taste your food? Will the silver impart a slight metallic tang to the broth? These are small concerns compared to the promise of a clean face. You might say you have just bought a piece of insurance for your vanity, a silver-plated guarantee that you will never again look like a melting candle at the lunch table. You feel a light, sarcastic chuckle bubble up inside you as you think about how serious this all seems. But that's the thing about the Victorian age. The serious and the ridiculous are often the same thing. Your walk home is slow and meditative. You listen to the sound of your footsteps, the dull thud on the stones creating a rhythm that matches the swaying of your coat. You pass a park where the trees are turning red and orange, their leaves falling in slow, silent spirals through the air. You see a group of men standing near a fountain, their mustaches gleaming in the fading light. You wonder if they know about the spoon. You wonder if they are struggling with their soup, too. You feel like you are part of a secret society, the Order of the Guarded Spoon. It is a small, quiet fraternity of men who value their dignity above all else. You realize that your mustache has become a bridge between your internal self and the external world. It is how you present your character to the public, and now you have the tool to keep that presentation flawless. As you reach your front door, you feel a wave of exhaustion. The excitement of the purchase is fading, replaced by the heavy, pleasant sleepiness of a long afternoon. You enter the house, and the silence wraps around you like a warm blanket. You head to the parlor, a room filled with overstuffed armchairs, heavy drapes, and the scent of old paper. You sit down in your favorite chair, the leather creaking softly as it accepts your weight. You place the box on a small side table and just stare at it for a moment. You are too tired to unwrap it now. The thought of testing the spoon can wait for tomorrow. For now, it is enough to know that it is here. You lean your head back against the chair, letting your shoulders drop. The tension of the morning is completely gone. The parlor is bathed in a soft, twilight glow. The shadows are long and thin, stretching across the patterned rug like silent fingers. You can hear the distant sound of a clock ticking in another room, a steady, unwavering pulse that reminds you of the passage of time. Historians still argue whether the Victorian obsession with such specific tools was a way to slow down the pace of life, forcing people to be more mindful of their actions. When you have a different spoon for every course, you can't rush. You have to be deliberate. You have to be present. You find this thought very comforting. In a world that is moving faster and faster, with steam engines and telegraphs, the mustache spoon is a tiny anchor holding you in the present moment. It is a tool for mindfulness, even if the Victorians would have just called it good manners. You think about the materials used in these spoons. Most were sterling silver, but some were made of electroplate, a cheaper alternative that allowed the middle class to enjoy the look of luxury without the price tag. Some even featured guards made of celluloid, an early form of plastic, which could be clipped onto a regular spoon. You imagine the celluloid guards, translucent and slightly orange, like pieces of tortoisey shell. They seem a bit flimsy compared to your solid silver version. You are glad you chose the silver. It feels more permanent, more like a legacy. You might even leave this spoon to your nephew one day, a silver-plated lesson in the importance of grooming. You can imagine his confused face as he looks at the little guard, a relic of a time when men cared so deeply about their upper lips. The sensory details of the room are becoming muffled as you drift closer to sleep. You can feel the texture of the box under your hand, the slight roughness of the brown paper. You can smell the lingering scent of the coal fire from earlier in the day. The world outside is growing dark, the gas lamps in the street flickering to life with a soft, warm hiss. You are safe in your parlor, surrounded by the objects you have collected over a lifetime. Each object has a story, and now, the mustache spoon is part of that narrative. It is a story of vanity, yes, but also a story of problem solving and artistry. It is a story of a time when humans believed that even the smallest inconvenience could be overcome with a clever piece of metalwork. You find yourself thinking about the golden age of majestic facial hair. Again, you realize that this age wouldn't have been possible without the supporting industry of waxes, combs, and spoons. The mustache wasn't just a physical trait, it was an economic engine. It provided jobs for barbers, chemists, and silversmiths. It was a massive, hairy ecosystem that touched every part of society. You feel a sense of gratitude for this ecosystem. It has given you a sense of identity and a community to belong to. You are a man with a mustache, and that means something. It means you are a man who takes care of things. You are a man who values the details. And now, with your new spoon, you are a man who can eat soup without fear. The sleepiness is a heavy weight now, pulling at your eyelids. You think about the rhythmic ticking of the clock, and it starts to sound like the soft clinking of silver spoons in a dining hall. You imagine 100 men, all sitting in silence, their mustache spoons moving in perfect unison. It is a peaceful, hypnotic image. No one is spilling, no one is melting, and no one is embarrassed. There is only the quiet dignity of a well-managed meal. You feel your breathing slow down, your heart rate dropping as the image takes hold. You are no longer in your parlor. You are in a world of silver and silk, a world where everything is in its right place. The quirky tidbit about travel kits comes back to you. You imagine yourself on a steamship, crossing the Atlantic. The sea is rough, and the soup is sloshing in the bowls. But you are unbothered. You have your mustache spoon. You are the only man in the dining saloon who looks perfectly groomed, even in a gale. People look at you with envy, their own mustaches dripping and sad. You are a beacon of stability in a world of chaos. This thought brings a small, sleepy smile to your face. You are the master of your own destiny, and that destiny is protected by a small silver bridge. It is a silly thought, you know, but in the twilight of the parlor, it feels profound. You realize that the history of the mustache spoon is a history of the stiff upper lip, literally being protected by silver. It is a physical manifestation of the Victorian desire to keep things under control, to prevent the messy realities of nature from intruding on the orderly world of society. Soup is nature, liquid, hot, and unpredictable. The mustache spoon is civilization, solid, cool, and engineered. You are on the side of civilization. You are a guardian of the order. You feel a deep sense of contentment as you drift further into the shadows. The world is a good place, and you have exactly what you need to navigate it. The light in the room is almost gone now. There is only a faint, silver glow from the moon filtering through the curtains. You feel the leather of the chair against your neck, cold and smooth. You are drifting on a sea of quiet thoughts, each one a soft wave that carries you further away from the waking world. You think about the silversmith, back in his shop, polishing his wares. You think about the shopkeeper, carefully putting away his trays. Everyone is going to rest now. The city is quieting down, the sounds of the horses and carriages fading into a distant, muffled hum. You are part of this quiet. You are part of the night. You imagine the spoon again, but this time it is glowing with a soft, inner light. It is no longer just a tool. It is a symbol of a life well lived. It represents the care you take in your appearance, the respect you have for tradition, and your willingness to embrace the new. It is a tiny masterpiece of human endeavor. You feel a sense of peace wash over you, a deep relaxation that makes your limbs feel heavy and warm. You are ready to let go. You are ready to sleep. The mustache spoon is waiting for you in its box, a silver promise for the morning. But for now, there is only the darkness and the silence. Historians still argue whether the decline of these objects was a loss for society or a necessary move toward simplicity. But here, in your dream-like state, there is no debate. The mustache spoon is a beautiful thing. It is a testament to a time when we cared about the little things, when we took the time to solve the smallest problems with grace and beauty. You feel a sense of kinship with the people of this age, a shared love for the intricate and the ornate. You are one of them. You are a Victorian gentleman, and you have earned your rest. As you fall deeper into sleep, the sensory details fade away. The scent of the polish, the sound of the clock, the weight of the silver, they all dissolve into a soft, gray mist. You are left with only a feeling of warmth and security. You are safe. You are cared for. And your mustache is safe too. The journey through history is continuing, but you are no longer walking. You are drifting, carried by the slow, steady rhythm of the night. The story of the mustache spoon will continue in your dreams, a shimmering silver narrative that leads you into the deepest, most peaceful sleep you have ever known. The world is quiet. The fire is out. The silver is still, and you are at peace. The evening air has turned a deep, bruised purple as you arrive at the heavy oak doors of a grand townhouse in the heart of the city. You are here for a formal dinner, an event that in the Victorian era is less of a social gathering and more of a high-stakes performance of domestic theater. As you step inside, the warmth of the foyer envelops you, smelling of beeswax, expensive cigars, and the faint, sweet scent of lilies. You hand your coat and hat to a silent footman, and as you do, you feel a brief moment of panic. You reach up to check the structural integrity of your mustache, feeling for that familiar, stiff resistance of the wax. It is holding firm for now, but you know the real test lies just beyond the double doors of the dining room. You have brought your new silver treasure with you, tucked away in your pocket like a secret weapon. The mustache spoon is your insurance policy against social ruin, your private shield against the humid onslaught of the first course. You move toward the parlor, your boots making a dull thud on the polished parquet floor, joining the other guests who are gathered in a sea of rustling silk and stiff white waistcoats. In this world, etiquette is the glue that holds society together, but it is also a minefield of potential embarrassment. You find yourself navigating a room where every gesture has a hidden meaning. The way you hold your gloves, the distance you stand from a lady, even the speed at which you blink could be interpreted as a sign of your character. Historians still argue whether the extreme complexity of Victorian dining etiquette was an intentional barrier designed to exclude the newly wealthy middle class, or if it was simply a natural byproduct of a society obsessed with order and industrial specialization. Regardless of the intent, the result is a set of rules so dense that you might as well be trying to solve a quadratic equation while balancing a teacup on your knee. You find a quiet corner and observe the room, noticing how the candlelight reflects off the heavy gold frames of the portraits on the walls. The air is thick with the murmur of polite conversation, a soft, buzzing sound that feels like a warm blanket. As the announcement is made for dinner, you offer your arm to a lady in a dress of shimmering emerald satin and lead her toward the dining room. The table before you is a landscape of shimmering white linen and glittering crystal. It is so crowded with silverware that you can barely see the cloth beneath it. One mainstream historical fact about Victorian dining is the shift from service to la Française, where all dishes were placed on the table at once, to service la Russe, where courses were served sequentially by servants. This change turned the dinner table into a revolving door of specialized tools. You see rows of forks, spoons, and knives stretching out from your plate like the keys of a very expensive, very confusing piano. There are forks with 3 tines, forks with 4, spoons with pointed bowls, and spoons with flat edges. You might say that the Victorian obsession with silverware was the 19th century equivalent of having a separate app on your phone for every single task. Only instead of a digital icon, you had a heavy piece of sterling silver that you had to remember how to lift without looking like a peasant. You take your seat, the chair heavy and solid beneath you. The seating chart is a masterpiece of social engineering, designed to ensure that everyone is seated next to someone of appropriate rank and conversational ability. You look at the array of silver to your right and left. You identify the fish knife, the salad fork, and the terrifyingly small oyster fork. A quirky, fringe tidbit about this era is the existence of truly bizarre, hyper-specialized utensils like the sparabus, a set of silver tongs specifically designed to hold a single stalk of asparagus, or the strawberry fork, which had 2 long, thin tines meant only for piercing individual berries. If you had used the strawberry fork for your peas, the silence at the table would have been loud enough to crack the windows. You feel a sense of overwhelming responsibility. You are not just here to eat. You are here to demonstrate that you are a person of refinement and education. You remember that crocodile dung sunscreen from our earlier journeys and realize that while the Egyptians used nature to protect their skin, the Victorians used silver to protect their social standing. The first course arrives, a steaming bowl of clear consommé. This is the moment you have been waiting for. You reach into your pocket and discreetly withdraw your mustache spoon. As you lay it on the table, next to the standard soup spoon provided by the host, you notice a few of your neighbors glancing at it with interest. It is a beautiful object, its silver guard gleaming under the chandelier. You feel a sense of quiet confidence. You pick up the spoon, and as you lower it into the broth, you are struck by the sensory experience. The silver is cold against your fingers, but the liquid in the bowl is radiating a gentle heat. You lift a spoonful to your lips. The mustache guard works perfectly. It creates a physical barrier, a little silver roof that keeps your hair dry while the soup flows smoothly into your mouth. You feel like a genius. You are enjoying your soup with a level of dignity that your fellow guests can only dream of. You look across the table at a colonel who is attempting to eat his soup with a traditional spoon. His mustache is a masterpiece of grooming, thick, dark, and curled into two magnificent spirals. But as he leans forward, the steam from the bowl begins to work its dark magic. You can see the wax softening, the points of his mustache beginning to sag toward the broth. He takes a sip, and as he pulls the spoon away, a single drop of brown liquid clings to the very end of his hair. He doesn't notice it at first, and it hangs there, a tiny, glistening threat to his military bearing. You feel a pang of sympathy for him, but also a surge of pride in your own foresight. You are the master of the soup course. You are the man with the guarded spoon. You take another sip, the flavor of the beef and herbs clean and sharp, unburdened by the taste of mustache wax. It is a rare moment of triumph in a world of constant social pressure. The conversation around the table turns to the latest technological marvels. The expansion of the railway, the wonders of the telegraph, and the mysterious power of electricity. You find yourself nodding along, feeling a strange connection between the giant steam engines crossing the continent and the small silver spoon in your hand. Both are products of an age that believes in progress, in the ability of human ingenuity to solve any problem, no matter how large or small. You imagine a world where every problem has a silver solution. A silver guard for your tea, a silver shield for your collar, perhaps even a silver umbrella for your entire face. It's a silly, sleepy thought, but it makes the heavy atmosphere of the dinner party feel a little lighter. You lean back slightly, the velvet of the chair pressing against your shoulders, and let the sounds of the room wash over you. The clink of silver against china is a rhythmic, musical sound, like the chiming of 100 tiny bells. As the meal progresses through the fish course and the roast, you navigate the different forks with practiced ease. You are careful to keep your elbows in and your back straight, adhering to the stiff upper lip philosophy that defines your generation. You realize that etiquette is a form of choreography, a dance that everyone at the table is performing in unison. If one person misses a step, the whole illusion of order is shattered. You think about the etiquette manuals of the time, books like Manners and Social Usages, which gave detailed instructions on everything from how to enter a room to how to properly use a napkin. Some of these books even advised on the correct way to breathe while eating, as if the act of respiration were a social skill that needed to be mastered. You find this level of micromanagement hilarious, yet you find yourself following the rules anyway. It is easier to conform than to be the subject of the next morning's gossip. You notice that the lady to your right is using her fan to communicate a silent message to someone across the room. The language of fans is another complex system of signals that you find fascinating. A half-closed fan against the lips might mean, "I wish to speak with you," while a fan dropped on the floor could be a sign of extreme displeasure. You wonder if there is a language of spoons as well. Perhaps leaving your mustache spoon at a 45-degree angle on your plate signifies that the soup was excellent, but the company was dull. You imagine yourself inventing a whole new code of silver based signals. It would be a way to have an entire conversation without ever saying a word. In a society where everything is hidden behind a mask of politeness, a secret language of utensils seems like a perfectly reasonable idea. You could call it the spoon cipher, a way for gentlemen to discuss politics, while appearing to simply be enjoying their dessert. The room is growing warmer as the evening wears on, the heat from the candles and the many guests creating a cozy, almost stifling atmosphere. You feel a wave of sleepiness beginning to tug at you. The richness of the food and the steady flow of wine are making your eyelids heavy. You look at the center of the table, where a massive silver epergne holds a mountain of hothouse grapes and exotic fruits. The light catches the facets of the crystal bowls, creating tiny rainbows that dance across the tablecloth. It is a beautiful, hypnotic sight. You find yourself staring at one particular rainbow, watching it shift and change as a guest moves a glass. The world feels very far away in this moment. The politics of the empire, the struggles of the working class, the noise of the city, all of it is outside these walls. Inside, there is only the silver, the silk, and the slow, steady rhythm of the meal. One light joke you heard recently comes to mind. Why did the Victorian gentleman bring a ladder to the dinner party? Because he heard the stakes were high and the soup was deep. You smile to yourself, a small, sleepy twitch of your lips. It is a terrible joke, but in the context of this elaborate dinner, it feels oddly appropriate. You are all perched on the ladders of your own social standing, trying to reach the top without falling off. And the soup really is deep, especially if you don't have the right spoon. You take a sip of water, the cool liquid refreshing your palate. The glass is heavy lead crystal, its rim thin and delicate. You are careful not to let it clink against your teeth. In this world, even the sound of your own body is something that must be managed. Historians still argue whether the decline of formal dining was a result of the world wars or the rise of a more casual, American-influenced culture. But sitting here in 1885, it's hard to imagine this world ever ending. It feels so solid, so permanent. The silver on the table has been polished for generations, and the rules of etiquette have been carved into the very stone of the culture. You feel like a small part of a very large machine, a gear in the great clock of Victorian society. It is a comforting feeling, a sense of belonging to something stable and predictable. You know exactly what fork to use, and you know exactly how to behave. There is no ambiguity here. There is only the silver and the expectations of your peers. You notice the host, a man of great wealth and even greater facial hair, leaning over to speak to a servant. His mustache is a formidable structure, a dark hedge that seems to have a life of its own. You wonder if he has a mustache spoon of his own, or if he has simply mastered the art of the hover, a technique where you hold the spoon just far enough away from your face to avoid a collision. It requires a steady hand and perfect aim, qualities that are highly prized in a gentleman. You think about the Victorian gym, which you imagine consists entirely of lifting heavy menace and practicing your aim with a silver fork. It's a workout for the social elite, a way to build the muscles of refined behavior. You feel your own social muscles starting to tire. The effort of being perfectly groomed and perfectly polite is exhausting. A quirky tidbit about Victorian etiquette is that it was considered rude to eat the last piece of bread or the last spoonful of soup. To do so was to imply that your host had not provided enough food, which was a grave insult to their hospitality. You look at your own bowl, which is nearly empty. You are careful to leave a small amount of broth at the bottom, a silent tribute to the host's generosity. It is a waste of good soup, but a necessary sacrifice on the altar of good manners. You realize that so much of your life is defined by these small, symbolic acts. You are constantly communicating through what you don't do, what you don't say, and what you don't eat. It is a complex, silent dialogue that requires constant attention. The dessert course arrives, and with it, a new set of silver. You see a tiny, elegant spoon with a scalloped bowl designed specifically for ice cream. There is also a small, sharp, toothed fork for fruit. You are impressed by the sheer variety of tools on the table. It is as if the silversmiths of the world gathered together and asked, how many different ways can we possibly move food from a plate to a mouth? The answer, it seems, is infinite. You pick up the ice cream spoon and feel its cool, smooth surface. The ice cream is a pale, creamy yellow, flavored with real vanilla beans. It is a luxury that would have been impossible a generation ago. But thanks to the wonders of modern refrigeration and the ice trade, it is now a staple of the upper-class dinner table. You take a small bite. The cold sweetness a welcome contrast to the heavy flavors of the roast. As the meal draws to a close, the ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the men to their cigars and port. This is the moment when the formal masks slip just a little bit. The conversation becomes more relaxed, the jokes a bit louder. You reach up and adjust your mustache, which has survived the evening remarkably well. The wax is still holding, and the hair is dry and clean. You feel a sense of accomplishment. You have successfully navigated the minefield of Victorian etiquette, and you have done it with style. You pull your mustache spoon from your pocket one last time and look at it. It is more than just a tool. It is a symbol of your adaptability. You are a man who can thrive in a world of complex rules because you have the right equipment. You think back to the great wax melt of your earlier breakfast and realize how far you've come. You are no longer at the mercy of the steam. You have conquered the soup. You imagine yourself writing a letter to the editor of a gentleman's magazine, extolling the virtues of the mustache spoon. You would call it an essential device for the modern man of fashion. You can see the headline in your mind, printed in elegant, swirling font. You might even include a small diagram of the spoon's aerodynamics. It's a pleasant, sleepy daydream that carries you through the rest of the evening. The scent of cigar smoke fills the room, a rich, earthy aroma that signals the end of the formal festivities. The light in the dining room is beginning to dim as the servants start to extinguish the candles. The long, white table, once a landscape of silver and glass, is now a graveyard of empty plates and crumpled napkins. The energy of the evening is fading, replaced by a quiet, contented exhaustion. You feel a deep sense of peace. You have done your duty. You have been a good guest, a good conversationalist, and a perfectly groomed gentleman. You are ready to go home, to return to the quiet of your own parlor and the comfort of your own bed. The journey through the history of the mustache spoon has brought you to the very heart of Victorian society, and you have found it to be a world of beauty, complexity, and surprising ingenuity. As you stand up to leave, your boots make that familiar dull thud on the floor. You feel the weight of the mustache spoon in your pocket, a small, silver reminder of your success. You move through the foyer, collect your coat and hat, and step back out into the cool night air. The city is quiet now, the streets bathed in the soft, yellow light of the gas lamps. The fog has returned, wrapping the buildings in a damp, silent embrace. You walk home slowly, listening to the rhythm of your own footsteps. The world is a good place, and you are a part of it. You are a Victorian gentleman, and you are going to sleep. The image of the dinner table remains in your mind as you drift closer to the end of your walk. You see the rows of silver, the flickering candles, and the majestic mustaches of your peers. You feel a sense of kinship with all of them, all these people trying to find their way through a world of rules and expectations. You realize that while the tools may change, the human desire for dignity and connection remains the same. The mustache spoon is just one small expression of that desire, a silver, plated bridge between the messy reality of life and the elegant dream of society. You reach your front door, turn the key in the lock, and step into the silence of your home. The journey for today is over. The silver is still, the wax is set, and you are safe. You find yourself sitting in your library the following morning, the room bathed in a soft, dusty light that seems to dance with tiny golden particles in the air. The heavy, dark wood of the bookshelves reaches toward the ceiling, holding thousands of pages of history and science, but your attention is currently focused on a massive, leather-bound volume resting on your knees. It is a catalogue from one of the great silversmiths of London, a thick compendium of every imaginable domestic tool. Your fingers trace the embossed gold lettering on the cover, feeling the texture of the old leather, which is cool and slightly waxy under your touch. The house is incredibly quiet, save for the rhythmic, muffled ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, and the occasional soft rustle of a page as you turn it. You are on a quest to see just how deep this silver obsession goes. As you flip through the pages, you realize that your mustache spoon is just one small branch on a very large and very strange family tree of Victorian inventions. You see sketches of spoons that look more like medical instruments than dining utensils, each one promising a level of facial protection that borders on the absurd. One mainstream historical fact that strikes you as you browse is that the Victorian era was a literal explosion of intellectual property. In the United States and Britain alone, over 15 distinct patents were filed specifically for mustache, protecting silverware between 1870 and 1890. It seems that the soup problem was not just a minor annoyance, but a significant economic driver for the silver industry. You look at a design for a Solano mustache guard, which features a V-shaped shield rather than a semicircle. It looks sharp and aggressive, like something a knight might wear into battle if knights were primarily concerned with the safety of their whiskers. You might say that the Victorian gentleman's silver chest was starting to resemble a toolbox, more than a cutlery set, and you wonder if anyone ever accidentally brought a mustache guard to a duel instead of a pistol. It is a sleepy, humorous thought that makes you lean back further into the deep, welcoming cushions of your chair. You notice a section of the catalogue dedicated to Revel mustache protectors. and you find yourself intrigued by the sheer variety of approaches to the same problem. Some inventors clearly thought the dedicated spoon was too expensive or perhaps too cumbersome to carry. Instead, they offered removable mustache shields. You study the illustration of a tiny, spring-loaded silver clip that could be attached to any ordinary soup spoon. It is a marvel of miniaturization, featuring delicate filigree and a tiny hinge that allows it to pivot. You imagine a gentleman sitting at a restaurant, reaching into his waistcoat pocket and producing this little device. He would clip it onto the house spoon with a subtle, metallic click, instantly transforming a common tool into a piece of specialized equipment. It is like a pair of silver sunglasses for your spoon, a portable defense system that you can take anywhere. You imagine the confusion of a modern diner seeing such a thing today. They might think you were trying to perform surgery on your minestrone. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of these intricate silver guards was a genuine reaction to a functional problem, or if the Victorians simply possessed a cultural obsession with creating a separate tool for every human action as a way to display wealth. When everyone has a spoon, you distinguish yourself by having the spoon with the little silver bridge. As you turn another page, the paper makes a crisp, satisfying sound like a dry leaf skittering across a sidewalk. You encounter the left-handed dilemma, a topic that clearly caused a great deal of stress for a specific segment of the population. Most mustache spoons were designed for right-handed use, with the guard positioned to protect the lip when the spoon was held in the right hand. If you were a left-handed gentleman, using a standard mustache spoon was actually worse than using a regular one. The guard would be on the wrong side, potentially trapping the soup against your mustache rather than shielding it. You see a rare listing for a reversible mustache spoon, which featured a guard that could be unclipped and moved to the other side. It was the peak of 19th century versatility, a tool for the ambidextrous man of fashion. The catalog also features a medical mustache spoon, which you find particularly fascinating in its oddity. A quirky, fringe tidbit about this era is that these spoons were often used to administer thick, sticky tonics or cod liver oil. The guard wasn't just there to protect the mustache from the medicine. It was also designed to help funnel the unpleasant liquid past the taste buds and directly down the throat. You imagine the grimace of a Victorian child being fed a spoonful of sulfur and molasses from a silver, guarded spoon, the cold metal pressing against their lip as they tried to avoid the taste. It seems that even in moments of illness, the Victorians insisted on a certain level of mechanical complexity. You run your hand over the illustration, feeling the smoothness of the paper. Everything in this world is so deliberate, so carefully considered. Even the act of taking medicine is turned into an engineering challenge. You move on to the combination tools, which represent the more eccentric side of the silver trade. You see a mustache spoon and comb, a device that features a small set of silver teeth on the end of the handle. The idea was that you could finish your soup and then immediately attend to any stray hairs that had been displaced during the meal. It is a level of efficiency that feels almost modern, yet the execution is purely Victorian. You imagine a man at a dinner table, surreptitiously combing his face with his cutlery between courses. You could call it the original multi-tool long before the invention of the Swiss Army knife. You find yourself chuckling softly, the sound muffled by the heavy drapes and the thick carpet, if you think your modern smartphone is a distraction at the table. Imagine sitting next to a man who is actively grooming himself with his soup spoon. It is a humorous image that highlights the strange priorities of the age. The air in the library is becoming warmer as the sun climbs higher, casting long, rectangular shadows across the floor. You feel a deep sense of relaxation, the weight of the catalog acting like a heavy, comforting blanket on your legs. You think about the Mustache cup once more, the spoon's primary rival in the battle for the gentleman's face. While the spoon was the champion of the dinner party, the cup was the undisputed king of the breakfast table. You see an advertisement for a set of matching Mustache cups and spoons, sold as a gentleman's morning suite. They are decorated with hand-painted ivy leaves and delicate gold trim. The cup features a fixed porcelain bridge, while the spoon offers the silver guard. It is a complete ecosystem of protection. You realize that for a man of your status, the danger of a damp mustache is ever present, lurking in every cup of tea and every bowl of porridge. You are living in a world where you are constantly under siege by liquids, and your silver is your only defense. You find a section on exotic and international designs, which shows how the mustache spoon evolved differently in different cultures. The French designs are particularly ornate, often featuring vermeil, a thin layer of gold over the silver, and guards shaped like blooming flowers or intricate lace. They look more like jewelry than tools. The American designs, by contrast, are sturdier and more functional, often made of Britannia metal or electroplated nickel-silver. They are the workhorses of the mustache world, designed for the rugged individualist who still wants to look sharp at the lunch counter. You think about the different personalities reflected in these pieces of metal. A man's choice of spoon said as much about him as his choice of hat or his political affiliations. You might say that in 1885, you were what you ate with, and you certainly didn't want to be a man with a plain, unprotected spoon. The electroplate process is another mainstream historical fact that changed everything for the Victorian middle class. Before the mid-19th century, solid silver was a luxury reserved for the truly wealthy. But with the invention of electroplating, a thin layer of silver could be applied to a cheaper base metal, making these specialized tools available to almost everyone. This led to a silver rush in the domestic sphere, where even a modest household might own a few specialized spoons. You look at your own spoon, noticing the small hallmark near the base of the handle. It is sterling, a solid and heavy piece of history. You feel a sense of gratitude for the craftsmanship that went into it. Even though it is a tool for vanity, it was made with a level of care that is rarely seen in the modern world. You find yourself appreciating the weight of the silver once more, the way it seems to anchor you to the past. A quirky tidbit that catches your eye is the folding mustache spoon. For the military man on the move, it features a hinged handle that allows the spoon to be folded in half and tucked into a small tin box. This way, even in the middle of a muddy campaign in a far-off land, a soldier could maintain his facial dignity. You imagine a colonel in a dusty tent, far from civilization, carefully unfolding his silver spoon to eat a bowl of meager rations. It is a testament to the power of tradition and the lengths to which people will go to maintain a sense of normalcy in difficult circumstances. Even in the face of war, the mustache must be protected. You find this thought both ridiculous and deeply moving. It is a reminder that we cling to our small rituals because they make us feel human. As you continue to flip through the pages, your eyes begin to grow heavy. The repetitive imagery of the silver, the curves, the gods, the intricate engravings is starting to have a hypnotic effect. You see a mustache guard for the mustache, less a strange invention that was essentially a fake mustache made of silver that you could clip over your own lip to give the appearance of a fuller growth. It is the height of Victorian deception, a way to cheat the social requirements of the age. You imagine a man whose facial hair is thin and patchy, wearing a silver shield to hide his secret. It is a lonely, funny thought. You realize that everyone in this world is wearing some kind of mask, whether it's made of hair, silver, or etiquette. We are all just trying to fit in, to be the best version of ourselves that society expects. The sound of a bird chirping outside the window reaches your ears, a bright, cheerful sound that contrasts with the hushed atmosphere of the library. You look at the clock and realize that time has slowed down to a crawl. The steady thud, thud, thud of the pendulum is a lullaby, a rhythmic reminder that there is no need to hurry. You find yourself thinking about the Mustache Protection League again, but this time you imagine them as a group of inventors huddled in a workshop lit by gaslight. They are surrounded by scraps of silver and tiny gears, their faces smudged with soot as they work to solve the next great problem of the age. Perhaps they are working on a spoon that also keeps your tea at the perfect temperature, or a guard that automatically adjusts to the size of your mustache. It is a world of endless possibilities, fueled by the belief that any problem can be solved with a bit of cleverness and a lot of silver. You find an entry for the Great Exhibition of 1851, and you remember that this was where many of these specialized tools first gained public attention. Prince Albert himself was a great supporter of industrial design, and the exhibition was a showcase for the wonders of the modern world. You imagine walking through the Crystal Palace, the massive glass structure gleaming in the sun. You see rows and rows of silver displays, each one more elaborate than the last. There are mustache spoons from every corner of the empire, a glittering forest of silver guards. It must have been an overwhelming sight, a celebration of the human ability to refine the world around us. You feel a sense of connection to that time, a shared belief in the power of progress. You are a part of that narrative, a witness to the peak of Victorian ingenuity. The sleepiness is becoming more profound now, a warm wave that is slowly washing over your mind. You think about the spoon cipher you imagined last night and find yourself adding to the code. A spoon held vertically might mean, "I am bored," while a spoon placed face down on the table could mean, "The conversation is too loud." You imagine a whole room of people communicating in this silent, metallic language. It would be a world of perfect politeness, where no one ever has to say anything unpleasant. You could resolve a political disagreement just by shifting your spoon 2 inches to the left. It's a peaceful, orderly vision that brings a sense of calm to your heart. You feel your breathing becoming slower and deeper, your body sinking further into the chair. The catalog is starting to slide off your lap, but you don't have the energy to catch it. You think about the mustache trainers. Again, those leather straps that men wore at night. You imagine a man sleeping in his bed, his mustache held in place by leather and silver, dreaming of a world where soup doesn't exist. It is a world of solid foods, steaks, potatoes, and bread. A world where a man can be as messy as he wants without fear of social ruin. But then you realize that the mess is part of the fun. The struggle with the soup is what makes the victory of the spoon so sweet. You wouldn't appreciate the silver guard if you hadn't first experienced the great wax melt. You realize that life is full of these small challenges, and our attempts to overcome them are what give our lives meaning. The mustache spoon is a tiny monument to that struggle. The light in the library is shifting, the golden rectangles moving slowly across the floor as the sun continues its journey. You see the light catch the edge of your mustache spoon, which is sitting on the side table. It glitters for a second, a brilliant flash of silver that looks like a star. You find yourself staring at that light, mesmerized by its purity. It is a small piece of beauty in a world that can often be gray and complicated. You feel a sense of profound peace. The library is your sanctuary, a place where you can escape the noise of the world and find comfort in the stories of the past. You are safe here. You are warm, and you are surrounded by the things you love. One light joke you heard from your barber comes back to you. Why did the Victorian man refuse to eat his soup with a regular spoon? Because he didn't want his face to become a soup-stache attraction. You smile to yourself, a tired, genuine smile. The humor of the age is so dry and polite, much like the silver you are currently obsessing over. You find a strange comfort in it. It is a way to acknowledge the absurdity of your life without losing your dignity. You are a man who cares about his mustache, and that's okay. It's part of your identity, part of your character, and you have the tools to protect it. As you drift closer to sleep, the images of the catalog begin to blur together. You see a kaleidoscope of silver guards, leather straps, and porcelain cups. They are all dancing together in a slow, graceful waltz. The sound of the clock is becoming more distant, a faint heartbeat that is slowly fading away. You feel your mind expanding, moving beyond the walls of the library and out into the city. You see the thousands of other men, all with their own mustaches and their own silver spoons. You are all part of the same story, a shared experience of fashion and function. It is a comforting thought, a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. Historians still argue whether the extreme focus on such minor details was a distraction from the larger problems of the era, such as poverty and industrial pollution. But for you, in this moment, those problems feel very far away. You are focused on the small things, the details that make life beautiful and manageable. You are focused on the curve of a silver guard and the weight of a well-made spoon. You realize that sometimes the small things are the only things we can control. And by controlling them, we find a sense of order in a chaotic world. The mustache spoon is your anchor, your little piece of stability. The catalog finally slips from your lap and lands on the thick rug with a muffled thump. You don't open your eyes. You don't need to. You have seen everything you need to see. You are ready to let go of the waking world and drift into the realm of dreams. You imagine yourself walking through a forest of silver spoons, the guards overhead providing shade from the sun. The air is cool and smells of lavender and old paper. You are walking toward a soft, silver light, and you feel a sense of immense joy. Everything is in its right place. Your mustache is perfectly waxed. Your spoon is ready, and the world is at peace. As the darkness of sleep begins to take over, you feel a final sense of warmth and security. You are wrapped in the history of your era, a blanket of silver and silk that protects you from the cold. You are a Victorian gentleman, and you have found your way. The journey through the evolution of the mustache guard has brought you to a place of rest. You are ready to sleep. The library is quiet. The city is distant. And your heart is full. You close your eyes, the last image being the glint of the silver guard in the afternoon sun, a small, brilliant promise of a clean and dignified tomorrow. You sit by the window of your study, watching the rain streak down the glass in long, shimmering lines that distort the world outside into a blur of gray and green. It is now the early years of the 20th century, and the air feels different. Lighter, perhaps, but also a bit colder. The heavy, ornate world of the 1880s is slowly being dismantled, piece by piece, as a new age of efficiency and speed begins to take hold. You reach up to touch your upper lip, but the familiar, stiff resistance of the wax is gone. Your mustache is shorter now, a more modest, chevron style that requires far less engineering than the sweeping handlebars of your youth. You feel a strange sense of loss, a quiet mourning for a time when a man's face was a monument to his patience and his silver. On the desk beside you, your mustache spoon lies in its velvet-lined box, the silver beginning to show a faint, golden tarnish around the edges of the guard. It hasn't been used in weeks. It feels less like a tool and more like a museum piece, a relic of a civilization that has suddenly decided it is in too much of a hurry to worry about the state of its whiskers. The shift away from the majestic mustache was not a sudden revolution, but a slow, quiet erosion of tradition. One mainstream historical fact that marked the beginning of the end was the discovery of germ theory and the subsequent public health campaigns that followed. Doctors and scientists, once the greatest proponents of the protective qualities of facial hair, began to change their tune. They started calling the mustache a bacteria trap, a literal petri dish that men carried around right beneath their noses. You might say the mustache went from being a shield of health to a portable habitat for microscopic wildlife, and the public's appetite for elaborate facial hair began to sour. You imagine the Victorian gentleman's horror at being told his pride and joy was actually a breeding ground for the very diseases he was trying to avoid. It is a sleepy, ironic thought, all that wax and silver, only to be defeated by a creature too small to see. You feel a light, sarcastic amusement at the way science can turn a fashion statement into a medical hazard overnight. You pick up the mustache spoon, feeling the cool weight of the silver in your palm. It still feels beautiful, a masterpiece of human ingenuity, but it no longer fits into the narrative of your life. The world is moving toward the clean, shaven look, influenced by the crisp, efficient appearance of American businessmen and the rising stars of the silent cinema. You think about the 1907 mustache strike in Paris, a quirky, fringe tidbit that highlights the shifting cultural landscape. Waiters across the city went on strike, demanding the right to grow mustaches, which had previously been a privilege reserved only for the elite and the military. It was a battle for the democratization of facial hair, yet ironically, as soon as the right was won, the trend began to fade. It's as if once everyone could have one, no one really wanted one anymore. You find this human tendency to crave only what is forbidden quite humorous. You could call the mustache spoon the ultimate gatekeeper's tool, a device meant to separate those who had the time for grooming from those who did not. Historians still argue whether the decline of the mustache was primarily driven by the horrors of the First World War, or if the fashion was already on its deathbed long before the first gas mask was ever donned. The war, however, provided the final decisive blow. In the trenches of Europe, a thick, waxed mustache was more than just an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. To achieve a proper seal on a gas mask, a man's face had to be smooth and free of obstruction. One mainstream historical fact that changed the face of the world literally was the repeal of the British Army's mustache mandate in October 1916. After 56 years of requiring every soldier to wear a mustache, the High Command finally allowed men to shave. You imagine the sound of thousands of razors across the Western Front, a collective sigh of relief as the lip curtain law was finally abolished. The mustache spoon, once a symbol of military dignity, was suddenly rendered obsolete by the grim realities of modern warfare. You look at the silver guard on your spoon and think about the Gillette Revolution. King C. Gillette's invention of the safety razor, with disposable blades, was the final nail in the coffin for the elaborate grooming rituals of the 19th century. Before the safety razor, shaving was a dangerous and time-consuming task involving a cut, throat, straight razor and a steady hand, which is why so many men preferred to grow mustaches and visit the barber. But with the new, cheap, and safe razors, any man could achieve a smooth face in his own bathroom in a matter of minutes. You might say Gillette invented the first subscription service for men's faces, ensuring that everyone became an overgrown, clean-shaven toddler in the eyes of their Victorian grandfathers. You find yourself smiling at the thought of a whole generation of men suddenly looking 20 years younger, their chins emerging from the hair like long-lost islands. The atmosphere in your study is heavy with the scent of rain and old paper, a cozy, damp smell that makes you want to curl up and sleep. You feel the pull of the past, the memories of the dining rooms and the silver, and the laughter of friends who have long since moved on. The mustache spoon is a bridge to those memories, but the bridge is becoming overgrown and forgotten. You realize that trends are like the seasons. They arrive with great fanfare, they dominate the landscape, and then they quietly wither away to make room for the next thing. The Victorian age was a season of silver and hair, and now the winter of the modern world is arriving. You feel a sense of peace with this change. You don't need the spoon anymore, because you are no longer the man who needs to be protected from his soup. You have adapted. You have simplified. You have let go of the vanity of the wax. A light joke you heard at the club recently comes to mind. Why did the old colonel keep his mustache spoon even after he shaved? Because he used it as a very fancy, very confusing tool for eating his morning peas one by one. You chuckle softly, the sound lost in the rhythm of the rain. It is a silly image, but it speaks to the way we cling to objects even after their purpose has vanished. We turn them into heirlooms, into conversation pieces, or into small, silver mysteries for our grandchildren to find in the back of a drawer. You imagine a child 100 years from now finding your mustache spoon and wondering if it was a tiny shovel for a very small garden. They will never know the struggle of the soup melt, the heat of the steam, or the social pressure of the dinner table. To them, it will just be a piece of pretty metal, a silent witness to a world they can't imagine. You think about the mustache cup as well, and how it met a similar fate. Those beautiful porcelain cups, with their little bridges, are now being used as very small, very confused planters for violets or as containers for spare buttons. The entire industry that supported the Victorian face has collapsed. The apothecaries no longer stock Hungarian pomade in 10 different scents. The silversmiths no longer debate the optimal curvature of a mustache guard. It is a quiet disappearance, a vanishing of a whole culture of specialized care. You feel a sleepy sense of melancholy, but it is tempered by the comfort of your surroundings. You are safe in your study, and the world outside is changing without your permission, and that's okay. You have your memories, and you have your silver, and you have the sound of the rain. Historians still argue whether the extreme specialization of tools in the Victorian era was a sign of a society at its peak or a sign of a society that had become too obsessed with the trivial. Perhaps the mustache spoon was the ultimate triviality, a solution to a problem that we only created for ourselves because we insisted on wearing so much hair. You think about the simple, clean, shaven men of the ancient world and the simple, clean, shaven men of the future. The Victorian era was a strange, hairy detour in the history of the human face, a brief moment where we decided to see just how much hair we could balance on a lip and just how much silver we could use to protect it. You find this perspective very grounding. You are a part of a unique historical experiment, a member of the only generation that truly understood the relationship between soup and silver. The light in the room is fading, the gray of the afternoon turning into a soft, velvet black. You feel your muscles relaxing, your breathing becoming slow and steady. The mustache spoon is back in its box, tucked away in the shadows. You think about the Mustache Protection League. One last time, and you imagine them all retiring to a quiet, silver-plated heaven. They are all sitting in comfortable chairs, their mustaches clean and dry, their spoons resting on the table beside them. There is no soup there, only a soft, eternal light and the sound of a distant, ticking clock. It is a peaceful, sleepy vision that brings a sense of finality to your journey. You are ready to let the story end. You are ready to close your eyes and let the history of the spoon dissolve into the quiet of the night. One quirky tidbit you remember from an old medical journal is the anthrax scare of the 1920s, which was blamed on shaving brushes made from contaminated animal hair. It seems that even the clean, shaven look had its own hidden dangers, a final, parting shot from the world of hair. It's a reminder that nature is always trying to find a way in, whether we have mustaches or not. You find this oddly comforting. We try so hard to engineer our lives, to protect ourselves with silver and wax and rules, but in the end, we are just humans in a world we can't fully control. The mustache spoon was a beautiful attempt at control, a silver bridge over a sea of soup. And even if the bridge is no longer used, the fact that we built it at all is something to be celebrated. You feel a wave of deep, bone-heavy sleepiness. The repetitive sound of the rain on the roof is like a soft, rhythmic drumming that lulls you into a state of total relaxation. You think about the word mustache and how it sounds like a whisper. You think about the word silver and how it sounds like a chime. The words are losing their meaning as your mind begins to drift away. You are no longer in your study. You are floating on a sea of gray mist, moving toward a soft golden light. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. The mustache spoon is a memory. The Victorian era is a dream. And you are finally peacefully asleep. As you drift further into the shadows, you realize that the story of the mustache spoon is really a story about us. About our vanity, our creativity, and our constant struggle to be better than we are. It is a story about the small things we do to make life a little more beautiful. Even if those things are ultimately unnecessary, you feel a sense of kinship with every man who ever picked up a silver spoon and felt a sense of pride. You are all part of the same human family, a family that loves its gadgets and its rituals. You are ready to rest now. The world of 1885 is gone, but it left behind a little piece of silver to remind us that it was here. You close your eyes, the last thought being the weight of the spoon in your hand, a cold, solid anchor in a world of dreams. The ticking of the clock in the hall seems to slow down, the pauses between the ticks becoming longer and longer. The house is silent. The city is asleep. You are surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 silver spoons, their guards shimmering in the moonlight. They are like a field of metallic flowers, blooming in the darkness. You walk through them, your footsteps making no sound on the velvet carpet. You are going home. You are going to the place where there is no wax and no soup and no social rules. You are going to the heart of the night, where everything is soft and warm and quiet. The journey is over. The silver is still, and you are at peace. One mainstream historical fact to leave you with. The mustache spoon was so forgotten by the mid-20th century that when they were found in attics, they were often misidentified as specialized medical tools for the blind or unique spoons for the left-handed. It is the ultimate fate of the specialized invention to become a mystery. You find this hilarious and wonderful. You are the keeper of the mystery. You know what it was for. You know the struggle, and that knowledge is yours to keep even as you drift into the deepest sleep of your life. The mystery is safe with you. The silver is safe with you. Everything is exactly as it should be. The image of the silver god is the last thing you see, a tiny, glowing arch that spans the distance between the past and the present. It is a beautiful, simple shape, a testament to the fact that even the smallest problem deserves a graceful solution. You feel a sense of immense gratitude for the silversmiths, the inventors, and the men of the 19th century. They made the world a more interesting place, even if they made it a bit more complicated. You are ready to join them in the quiet, silver shadows. You are ready to rest. The story of the mustache spoon is done, and the night is yours. Sweet dreams of silver and silk, and may your mustache, wherever it may be, always remain perfectly, beautifully dry. You are lying in your bed now, the modern world pressing softly against the edges of your consciousness. Yet the weight of the 19th century still feels remarkably present. Your room is filled with a deep, velvety darkness, broken only by a thin sliver of moonlight that rests upon a small, ornate object on your nightstand. It is the mustache spoon you found at that antique fair, a cold and silent witness to a world of wax and velvet that has long since faded into the shadows of history. You reach out and touch the silver guard with the tip of your finger, feeling the smooth, polished surface and the intricate engravings that tell a story of a time when even a bowl of soup was a social challenge. The metal is cool against your skin, a sharp contrast to the warmth of your blankets. You realize that this tiny piece of silverware is a bridge between your reality and the world of the Victorian gentleman, a physical connection to a past that was obsessed with the delicate balance of appearance and function. You feel a deep sense of calm as you reflect on the journey you have taken, from the morning ritual of the wax to the grand dinner parties and the eventual decline of the majestic mustache. One mainstream historical fact that anchors this object in time is that the production of mustache spoons and their porcelain counterparts reached its absolute peak between 1880 and 1900, coinciding exactly with the height of the Victorian middle class's obsession with specialized domestic tools. During this 20-year window, the silver markets of London and New York were flooded with thousands of these devices, each one promising a level of dignity that no ordinary spoon could provide. You think about the sheer volume of silver that was hammered and polished just to protect the facial hair of a single generation. It is a staggering thought, a monument to a very specific form of vanity that existed for only a brief moment in the grand timeline of human history. You might say that the mustache spoon was the shooting star of the cutlery world. Brilliant, specialized, and gone almost as soon as it arrived. You find yourself smiling at the thought of all that silver sitting in drawers today, waiting for someone like you to rediscover its quiet, quirky beauty, a quirky, fringe tidbit that you might find amusing as you drift toward sleep is the existence of the mustache guard attachment for public drinking fountains. In the late 1890s, as urban centers began to install more communal water sources, some inventors feared that gentlemen would ruin their grooming while trying to take a sip of water in the park. They designed a small, portable silver clip that could be snapped onto the rim of a public fountain, creating a temporary shield for the mustache. It was the ultimate expression of the mustache first mentality, a belief that no public utility should ever come between a man and his wax. You imagine a gentleman in a top hat, standing in a crowded city square, carefully clipping his silver guard to a fountain before taking a drink. It is a level of preparation that feels almost heroic, in a very silly and polite way. You could call it the 19th century version of carrying your own reusable straw, only much more elaborate and significantly more metallic. Historians still argue whether the invention of these specialized tools was a genuine necessity born of practical struggle, or if they were essentially status theater, designed to make the simple act of eating look like a complex and refined skill. Some argue that the mustache spoon allowed men to maintain a stiff upper lip, literally and figuratively, ensuring that no slip of the hand could reveal the vulnerability of the man beneath the hair. Others suggest that the spoons were merely a way for silversmiths to capitalize on the anxiety of the newly wealthy, who were desperate to prove they knew how to handle the correct tools at the table. As you lie in the quiet of your room, you realize that the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. The mustache spoon was both a tool and a symbol, a practical solution to a messy problem, and a badge of belonging to a specific social class. It was a silver-plated answer to the question of how to live a dignified life in a world of hot soup and shifting fashions. You think about the crocodile dung sunscreen we discussed earlier and the mustache trainers of the previous sections, and you realize that humans have an endless capacity for invention when it came to their faces. We are a species that simply cannot leave our features alone. We must curl them, paint them, shield them, and protect them with silver. You find this realization very comforting. It means that your own small worries and vanities are part of a long and storied tradition. You are not alone in your desire to look your best or to find a clever solution to a minor problem. You are just the latest in a long line of people who have stared into a mirror and wondered how to manage the hair on their lip. You feel a light, sleepy sense of kinship with the men of the 1880s. They were just like you, only with more wax and much better spoons. A light joke comes to mind. Why did the Victorian gentleman bring his mustache spoon to the modern taco stand? Because he heard the shell was hard, but he didn't want his handlebar to get it out of proportion. You chuckle softly to yourself, the sound muffled by your pillow. It is a terrible joke, but it highlights the absurdity of bringing a 19th century solution to a 21st century meal. Imagine trying to eat a burrito or a slice of pizza with a mustache spoon. The world has changed so much, yet the fundamental problem remains. If you have a mustache today, you still have to deal with the soup, the coffee foam, and the stray crumbs. You just don't have a silver shield to help you. You might say that we have become a more rugged and messy society, or perhaps we have just learned to embrace the flavor saver with a bit more humor. You feel a sense of appreciation for the simplicity of your modern life, even as you admire the complexity of the past. The sensory details of your room are beginning to fade as you sink deeper into your mattress. You can feel the weight of your blankets, a heavy and comforting presence that keeps the cool night air at bay. You can hear the distant hum of a car on the road, a modern sound that feels like a quiet, mechanical lullaby. You find yourself thinking about the Mustache Protection League. One last time, you imagine them all gathered in a grand, silver-lined hall, their mustaches gleaming in the moonlight. They are raising their spoons in a silent toast to you, the traveler who has followed their story through the halls of history. They are not ghosts. They are memories, preserved in silver and silk. You feel a sense of peace as you return their silent salute. Your journey is coming to an end, and you have found exactly what you were looking for: a sense of connection and a moment of quiet reflection. You think about the Great Wax Melt and the military mandate, and you realize that history is just a collection of these small human moments. It isn't just about battles and treaties. It's about the way a man eats his soup, or the way he grooms his face in the morning. These are the details that make the past feel real, that turn the figures in the sepia photographs into people you could actually talk to. You feel a deep sense of gratitude for these stories. They are like small, silver lights in the darkness of the past, guiding you toward a better understanding of what it means to be human. You are ready to let the stories go now, to let them drift away like the steam from a bowl of Victorian soup. You are ready to embrace the silence and the darkness of the night. One last quirky tidbit. Did you know that some mustache spoons were designed with a small aroma vent in the guard? This allowed the scent of the soup to reach the nose, even while the mustache was protected. The Victorians believed that the smell of the food was just as important as the taste, and they didn't want their silver shields to interfere with the olfactory experience of the meal. It is a level of sensory engineering that is truly impressive. You imagine a man taking a deep breath of savory bouillon, his mustache safe and dry behind its silver bridge. It is a perfect, harmonious moment of Victorian domesticity. You find this thought very soothing. It is a reminder that even in our most mechanical and engineered moments, we are still creatures of sense and feeling. The silver spoon on your nightstand seems to be glowing with a soft, inner light. You watch it for a moment, mesmerized by the way the moonlight catches the curve of the guard. It is a beautiful, simple shape, a testament to the idea that no problem is too small for a graceful solution. You feel your eyelids growing heavier and heavier, the weight of the day finally catching up with you. You are no longer thinking about history or silver or wax. You are just feeling the rhythm of your own breathing, the slow and steady pulse of a body at rest. You are drifting on a sea of quiet thoughts, each one a soft wave that carries you further away from the waking world. You are safe, you are warm, and you are at peace. Historians still argue whether the decline of the mustache spoon was a loss of culture or a gain in efficiency. But as you fall into sleep, you realize that nothing is ever truly lost. The mustache spoon still exists in antique shops, in museums, and in stories like this one. It remains a part of our collective memory, a reminder of a time when we cared enough about the little things to make them beautiful. You feel a sense of pride in being the keeper of this story, the one who remembered the silver bridge in an age of disposable plastic. You are the link between the past and the future, the one who carries the memory of the mustache spoon into the dreams of the night. You think about the spoon cipher one last time, and you decide that a spoon placed under your pillow means, "I am ready for sleep." You imagine yourself placing a silver spoon in your mind, a silent signal to the world that your day is done. The world responds with a deep, heavy silence. The house is still. The city is quiet. The moonlight is soft. Everything is exactly as it should be. You are a passenger in the great, slow carriage of the night, and you are headed toward a place of perfect rest. The journey through the history of the mustache spoon has reached its final destination, and the path ahead is lined with velvet and silver. The light joke about the soup stash attraction comes back to you, and you give one last, tiny smile. It is a good way to end the story, with a bit of humor and a lot of heart. You realize that history doesn't have to be dry and dusty. It can be warm and funny, and as cozy as a Victorian parlor. You feel a deep sense of contentment. You have spent your evening in the company of gentlemen and silversmiths, and you have come away with a better appreciation for the oddities of the human experience. You are ready to close your eyes for the last time tonight. You are ready to let the darkness take over, warm and welcoming like a heavy wool coat. As you drift into the final stages of sleep, the sensory details of the story begin to blend together. You feel the cold of the silver, the warmth of the wax, the smell of the lavender, and the sound of the ticking clock. They are all part of the same peaceful dream. You are no longer an observer of history, you are a part of it. You are a Victorian gentleman, a modern dreamer, and a silver-plated adventurer all at once. The world is a vast and beautiful place, full of mysteries and mustache spoons. And you are right in the heart of it, safe and sound. The image of the silver guard is the last thing you see, a tiny, glowing arch that spans the distance between the world of 1885 and your own. It is a bridge to the past, a shield for the present, and a promise for the future. You feel a sense of immense joy as you cross that bridge and enter the realm of dreams. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. The silver is resting. The wax is set. And you are finally, beautifully at peace. The night has fully settled in now, wrapping the world in a soft, heavy blanket of quiet that feels as thick as the velvet curtains of a Victorian library. Your breathing has slowed to a rhythmic, effortless pace. Each inhale a gentle expansion of calm, and each exhale a release of the day's lingering weight. The images of silver spoons and waxed mustaches are beginning to soften at the edges, dissolving into a gentle, golden haze that fills your mind with warmth. There is no more need for armor or shields, no more rules of etiquette to follow, and no more soup to navigate. You are in a place of total safety, where the only sound is the quiet whisper of your own rest. The silver spoon on your nightstand is now just a shadow in the moonlight, its work done for the night. You feel a sense of deep reassurance, knowing that the history we have explored is safely tucked away in the back of your mind. A quiet treasure to be revisited whenever you need a moment of peace. The world outside is still and silent, the stars watching over the house with a cold, steady light that feels like a protective gaze. You are perfectly comfortable, perfectly relaxed, and perfectly still. The tension has completely left your body, from the tips of your toes to the very crown of your head. As you drift into the deepest part of the night, the story of the mustache spoon becomes a soft, humming melody in the background of your dreams. It is a song of silver and silk, a lullaby for the modern age that reminds you of the beauty in the small, odd things of life. You are sinking into the softest, warmest part of your sleep, where the dreams are kind and the rest is profound. Let the world fade away completely now. Let the darkness be your guide. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. Sweet dreams of silver and silk